My boyfriend of 6 years broke up with me for the dumbest reason imaginable, especially after I'd supported him for all that time. But he seemed to forget one tiny detail. The house is in my name. And now, he's living in his car. For some context, those 6 years with Finn were what I thought was a partnership built on love and loyalty. But looking back, it was mostly built on my patience. And when I say patience, I mean I was the one footing all the bills while he jumped from one passion project to the next. There was the YouTube channel that fizzled out, despite him swearing he'd be the next PewDiePie. The NFT craze he was convinced he was ahead of the curve on. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. And his brief stint trying to strike it rich in crypto, where he torched most of his savings. Through all of this, I held down the fort. The mortgage, that was me. Utilities, me. Groceries and car payments, yep, also me. Finn was the visionary and I was, well, I guess I was the sucker who kept funding his visions. Every time he'd approach me with a new scheme, his eyes lit up with excitement. I'd swallow my doubts and back his play. This time will be different, he'd promise, and like a fool, I'd believe him. Things got strange about 2 weeks ago. Finn became withdrawn, glued to his phone, and started making weird comments about needing space to grow and finding himself. I didn't worry at first. He always gets philosophical before launching another doomed venture. But then he started criticizing the state of the house, which was a new one. He'd point out unwashed dishes or unfolded laundry with this odd judgmental tone I'd never heard before. Then, last week, he sat me down at our kitchen table right after I got home from work. He had this grim look on his face I'd only seen when he was about to announce another financial failure. But what he said next made me feel like I'd slipped into an alternate reality. I think we should break up, he said. You just don't do enough around the house. I actually laughed. I thought it was a joke. But when his face stayed dead serious, I felt something just snap inside me. This man, who I've essentially supported like a child for 6 years, was accusing me of not pulling my weight. When I asked him to clarify, because, seriously, he couldn't be serious, he doubled down. You never clean up after yourself, and I feel like I do all the emotional labor. I'm always the one pointing out what needs to be done. To give you some perspective, I work insane hours to keep us financially stable while he's at home, brainstorming his next move. Yes, sometimes I'm too exhausted to do the dishes immediately or fold the laundry right away. Sometimes I leave a coffee mug on the counter. But you know what I do? I pay every single bill that keeps a roof over our heads and food in the fridge. Meanwhile, Finn's greatest contribution to the household has been reorganizing the bookshelf by genre 3 times and tossing my perfectly good Tupperware because it didn't spark joy. This is the same man who has a complete meltdown if the Wi-Fi cuts out for 5 minutes. And guess who calls the internet provider every single time? Me. Every birthday, holiday, or weekend plan was orchestrated by me. He can't even order takeout without asking for my opinion 3 times and then still messing up my order. But here's where it got genuinely bizarre. After his little breakup speech, Finn started acting like the house was already his. He made a smug remark about how this would be a good reset for both of us, and suggested I could move back in with my mom or something. He even began talking about turning the guest room into his office once I was gone and how he might finally get a dog. That's when it clicked. He had either genuinely forgotten, or maybe never even knew, whose name is actually on the deed to this house. Hint, it's not his. Not even close. This house was my inheritance from my grandparents. I am the sole owner. Every mortgage payment, every repair, every single bill, it's all in my name. I excused myself, went upstairs, and locked the bedroom door. I'm not going to fight with him or try to change his mind. No, I'm going to let him stew in his little fantasy for as long as he wants. Let him think he's winning. Let him think I'm the one packing my bags. Because here's the deal. Finn has no idea what's about to hit him. He is clueless that he's on the verge of losing everything, and honestly, I can't wait to watch the moment he realizes how badly he just messed up. So, as I mentioned, my ex-boyfriend Finn broke up with me, claiming I didn't do enough around the house. The irony was staggering since I've been paying for literally everything. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, while he's been working on himself for the past 3 years. On top of that, I did most of the cooking, cleaning, and every other chore that wasn't directly related to his precious gaming setup. But here's the kicker, after dropping the bomb, Finn acted like he owned the place. I'm not exaggerating, I think it took him all of 5 seconds to decide the house was his now. He didn't say it directly, but his whole demeanor screamed it. He started lounging around like the king of a castle he didn't build, leaving messes everywhere and gaming until 4 a.m. as if nothing had changed. He even started telling me which of my things I needed to pack to leave in an orderly way. All the while, I just sat there, stunned, waiting to see how far this delusion would go. Spoiler, it went very far. About a week later, Finn informed me he was having a friend over. This was during one of his phases of barely acknowledging my existence, just muttering something about how I needed to respect his space. His space in my house. Sure, buddy. I just nodded, thinking, okay, let's see who this friend is. When the doorbell rang, I opened it to a woman holding a bottle of wine with a bright smile. Her name was Mila, and she was perfectly polite. But you didn't need to be a detective to see this wasn't just a friend. The way she looked at Finn, they were definitely a thing. Finn didn't even bother with a proper introduction. He just breezed past me like I was the hired help, giving Mila a grand tour of the house. My house. And wow, did he sell it like he was a high-powered real estate agent. This is the living room. I've been thinking of getting a new sectional, something more modern. This is the kitchen. I love the open concept for hosting. This is my office, where I get most of my work done. I almost choked when he said that last part. Work. The man hasn't held a job since 2018. The office is the spare room I set up for his freelance ambitions, which is now just his Fortnite dungeon. Mila was buying every word. I could see her picturing her life there, settling into some Pinterest-perfect fantasy. Meanwhile, I was standing in the kitchen, gripping my coffee mug so tight I thought it might shatter. At that moment, I had two choices: cause a massive scene and expose him right there, or play it cool and let him dig his own grave. I chose option 2. Honestly, I was morbidly curious to see how far he'd take this charade. The entire evening, Finn acted like he'd already moved on and was just graciously letting me crash until I got my act together. He even had the audacity to pull me aside and say, "I think it's best if we start working on a timeline for when you'll be out. No rush, of course, but Mila and I need to start planning." Planning what? A housewarming party in my living room? I just smiled and said, "Oh, don't worry about me. I'm handling everything." You should have seen his face, so smug. He really thought he'd won. The next morning, I made my move. While Finn was still asleep, I had a locksmith come and change every lock on the house. The locksmith was in and out in less than an hour. I paid him, thanked him, and sat down with a cup of tea to wait. When Finn finally emerged and strolled into the kitchen, I casually informed him, "By the way, I had the locks changed this morning. You'll need to get your things and be out by the end of the day." You guys, the look of pure panic on his face was priceless. He went completely pale. "What do you mean you changed the locks? You can't do that." "Oh, I absolutely can. This is my house, remember? It's in my name. You're not on the deed, you're not on the mortgage, and now, you're not welcome here." He tried to argue. He pleaded. At one point, he even tried to guilt-trip me, saying, "I thought you loved me. I thought we were building something together." Mila showed up later, probably expecting another cozy night with her new man. Instead, she got a front-row seat to Finn packing his belongings while I stood with my arms crossed, reminding him not to forget his gaming chair. She looked completely baffled, repeatedly asking, "Wait, this isn't your house?" Finn didn't even have an answer for her. By the end of the day, Finn was gone. Mila was gone. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on the couch Finn wanted to replace, and thought about how close I'd come to ruining my life by being too generous with my time, money, and patience. Never again. Oh, and for anyone wondering, Finn is now crashing on friends' couches. A mutual acquaintance told me Mila dumped him the second she realized he was unemployed, broke, and homeless. Karma is a beautiful thing, isn't it? I thought that would be the end of it, but apparently, Finn wasn't finished humiliating himself. A few days after I kicked him out, I got a call from our mutual friend Caleb, who said he was just checking in. I could tell from his tone he was digging for information, so I just asked him straight up, "Did Finn send you?" Caleb hesitated, then spilled the whole story. It turns out Finn had been planning this breakup for months. He'd been telling everyone, friends, acquaintances, even his family, that he was about to take over the house and start a new chapter. He'd painted himself as the long-suffering boyfriend who had put up with my nagging for years. According to his story, the house was basically his, because of all the work he'd put into making it a home. I had to stop Caleb right there because I nearly choked on my laughter. What work? The man barely did his own laundry, let alone anything to maintain a house. I asked Caleb if Finn ever mentioned the tiny detail of the house being entirely in my name. He said Finn's plan was that I'd probably just leave when he asked, and if I didn't, he'd figure it out. Oh, Finn. Sweet. Delusional Finn. Apparently, Finn was so confident I'd just roll over and hand him my house that he'd already done a victory lap. He told people he was finally free, and had even made plans to host a housewarming party. Again, in my house. The audacity is just stunning. Caleb also told me something that genuinely infuriated me. Finn had been minimizing everything I did for him, telling people I was barely paying the bills, and that he was the one holding everything together. This, from a guy who didn't even know the amount of our monthly mortgage payment. The lies were so bold and bizarre I couldn't help but laugh. I thanked Caleb for the intel and started thinking. At first, I considered just letting it go. Finn was out of my life, the house was secure, and I could finally move on. But then I remembered the years of emotional manipulation, the financial freeloading, and now this ridiculous smear campaign. No, I wasn't going to let that slide. I decided to hit Finn right where it would hurt the most. His ego. First, I sent a polite but firm group message to our mutual friends to set the record straight. The house was 100% in my name. Finn had never contributed a penny to the mortgage or major bills. Any claims he built our life together were pure fiction. I kept it factual, not emotional, but I made sure to include screenshots of old utility bills and a redacted photo of the deed with only my name on it. I refused to let him control the narrative. Second, I contacted a local charity that helps furnish homes for families in need. I donated all of Finn's leftover junk, his old desk, a couch he never used, and even the gaming chair he'd abandoned in his haste. They were thrilled, and I was thrilled to see it all go. Lastly, I decided to let Finn's parents know what was really going on. They'd always been kind to me, and I felt they deserved to know the truth. I didn't get into every gritty detail, but I told them enough to make it crystal clear that Finn's victim act was a complete fabrication. The group message exploded almost instantly. Most people were shocked but supportive, saying they had no idea. A few of his die-hard friends tried to defend him, saying he was going through a lot, but I shut that down fast. We all go through things, I replied, but that doesn't give you the right to lie and try to steal from someone. Of course, Finn found out and called me, absolutely furious. He accused me of ruining his life and airing our dirty laundry. I calmly told him he'd been doing that himself for months. I was just correcting the record. Then I hung up and blocked his number. As for his parents, they were horrified. They apologized profusely and said they had no idea he'd been treating me so poorly. His mom even offered to pay me back for some of the money he'd cost me, but I declined. I didn't want money, I just wanted the truth to be known. The real cherry on top came a few weeks later. I ran into Mila at a coffee shop. She came up to me, clearly embarrassed, and apologized for her role in everything. She said Finn had lied to her about the entire situation. Then she told me the funniest thing I've heard all year. Finn was now living in his car. Apparently, after the truth came out, none of his friends wanted to host him, and his parents weren't interested in bailing him out. He burned too many bridges, and now he was reaping what he sowed. I don't wish homelessness on anyone, but in this case, I can't say I feel too bad. He made his bed, or in this case, his back seat, and now he has to lie in it. So, remember how I mentioned Finn wasn't done trying to get my house back? Well, grab your popcorn, because this saga just got even more ridiculous. Last week, I was having lunch with my sister, Nora, when she started acting strange. She kept glancing at her phone and giving me these odd looks, like she was bursting to tell me something. Finally, I just asked her what was wrong. "Don't be mad," she began, which is never a good sign. But Finn reached out to me. I nearly spat out my drink. What? It turns out Finn has been telling anyone who will listen that we had some kind of verbal agreement about the house. In his new reality, we were practically married, we weren't, and he contributed significantly to the household, he didn't. But here's the real kicker, he asked Nora for money. Not a small amount, either. He wanted enough to get back on his feet and fight for what's rightfully his. And she gave it to him. Before you grab your pitchforks, let me explain. Nora is usually the smartest person I know, but Finn had apparently fed her this sob story about how he'd invested everything into our relationship and was now homeless because of me. He even showed her screenshots of a few bills he'd paid years ago, conveniently omitting that he'd used my money to pay them. I felt bad for him, Nora admitted, looking guilty. He was living in his car, and he seemed so sure about everything. He said he just needed enough to get a fresh start. I sat there, trying to process this betrayal. How much did you give him? $2,000, she mumbled into her coffee. $2,000. I was about to lose it, but then Nora pulled out her phone and showed me their text exchange. As I scrolled through it, I realized my sister might be a genius. You see, Nora hadn't just handed over the money. She'd made him sign a proper IOU, complete with repayment terms and interest. She'd even gotten him to list his car as collateral. When I asked why she went to all that trouble, she just smiled. Because I knew he was full of it, she said. I wanted proof of exactly how desperate he was. Plus, I figured a legal document showing he had to borrow money might come in handy. I could have hugged her. But the story gets better. Remember Caleb, our friend who filled me in on Finn's pre-breakup plotting? Well, he sent me screenshots of Finn's recent social media posts, where he's now painting himself as the victim of a calculated gold digger who trapped him in a relationship just to steal his future earnings. Yes, you read that right. He thinks I spent 6 years funding his unemployed lifestyle because I was after the imaginary money he was definitely going to make. The posts are filled with vague accusations about how I manipulated him and took advantage of his trusting nature. According to Finn's latest fiction, he was the one who supported me emotionally while I was unstable. This, from the man who once had a 3-hour meltdown because I bought the wrong brand of energy drink. But here's where it gets really interesting. My friend Zoe has been tracking everyone Finn has contacted, and apparently, he's telling different stories to different people. To some, he's the victim. To others, he's the generous partner who gave it all up for me. To a select few, he's even claiming we had a business partnership that I betrayed. The lies get more elaborate by the day. Last week, he told someone I'd promised to put his name on the deed as a birthday gift, then changed my mind out of spite. Pretty creative for a guy who once forgot my birthday because he was too busy trying to become a Twitch streamer. Yesterday, I received a series of increasingly unhinged messages from him, threatening to expose me to everyone we know. He's going to tell people all my secrets, though I'm genuinely curious what secrets he thinks he has, considering I'm the one who knows about his failed crypto investments and that time he tried to become a professional dog photographer with my camera. I haven't replied to any of it, but I have saved everything. Something tells me this isn't over. Finn has never been good at facing reality, and now that he's likely blown through Nora's money on another get-rich-quick scheme, I'm sure he's cooking up his next move to get what he thinks he deserves. So, last Sunday, I was doing my weekly grocery run when I literally ran into Finn's mom. I tried to just smile and keep walking, but she grabbed my cart and said, "We need to talk." Now, his mom has always been sweet to me, but this time she looked different, worried, but also angry. She asked if we could get coffee, and something in her voice made me agree. Once we sat down, she took a deep breath and said, "I need to tell you what Finn's been up to, because this has gone too far." It turns out Finn showed up at his parents' house last week with a wild story about how he was getting the house back. According to him, he had evidence that I'd somehow tricked him into putting all the bills in my name and even claimed to have proof that he'd given me cash for the down payment. His mom stopped him right there, reminding him that she and his dad were there when I bought the house, years before Finn even moved in. But Finn just talked right over her, rambling about building a legal case and needing to borrow money. When his parents refused, he completely lost it, accusing them of never supporting his dreams and choosing my side over their own son. His mom looked so weary as she told me this. "He's not the boy I raised," she said. "I don't know what happened to him. But here's where it gets really wild." She started telling me about things Finn had done that I never even knew. He told his 19-year-old sister that he'd bought me out of the house and needed to borrow her savings for renovations. Trusting her big brother, she gave him the money. He'd been making the rounds to all their relatives, telling different versions of his sob story to anyone who would listen. He even told his grandmother that I was holding his gaming equipment hostage, the same equipment I donated to charity months ago. Then, his mom pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of a GoFundMe page he'd created. The title, "Help Local Man Reclaim His Home from Manipulative Ex." I almost choked on my coffee. The page was filled with absolute fantasies about how he'd invested his life savings into the house, what savings, and how I had manipulated the paperwork to cut him out. He'd even posted pictures of my house, claiming he'd done all the renovations himself. The only renovation Finn ever did was rearrange the furniture when he was procrastinating. But the craziest part? People were actually donating. He'd raised about $800 before his mom found it and had the page taken down. "I had to do something," she said. "He needs to face reality." She told me Finn had been sleeping in his car in their driveway for a week, refusing to come inside unless they backed his legal case. Every morning he'd leave, claiming he had meetings. Every evening he'd return with some new delusion of progress. His mom finally had enough when she overheard him on the phone trying to convince Mila, remember her, to be a character witness. To her credit, Mila apparently just laughed and hung up. "I'm not telling you this to get sympathy for him," his mom said. "I'm telling you this because I want you to be prepared. He's not going to stop." Then she did something that surprised me. She handed me a small photo album filled with pictures of Finn from the last few years. In every single one, he was on his phone or laptop while life happened around him. "I should have seen it sooner," she said. "How he used people. I enabled him for too long, and I'm so sorry you got caught in the middle of it." I tried to give the album back, but she shook her head. "Keep it. Maybe someday he'll want to see the person he used to be. But for now, I have to do what I should have done years ago." She told me she and his dad had made a decision. They're changing their locks and cutting off his Wi-Fi. No more sleeping in the driveway, no more enabling his fantasies. They've arranged for him to stay with an uncle in another state who has offered him a real, manual labor job. No computers, no schemes. He either takes the offer and gets his life together, or he figures it out on his own. "We're done watching him try to tear down other people's lives because he refuses to build his own," she said. As we were leaving, she hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for showing him there are consequences. I just wish he'd learn from them." I watched her walk away, feeling this strange mix of relief that his family finally sees him clearly, and a little sadness for the person he could have been.